What's up, everybody? So today's the day I'm throwing the mount rail, the floating, I don't know, whatever the world it's called, THBM2218BA, the Mapex floating bass drum tom mount. And so just to refresh everyone's memory, if you haven't seen the video yet, this is what the part itself looks like. This is the floating rail system. These are the mount bars. These are and I really like these ball and sockets because look at the design on the ball and sockets, how the pressure plate wraps around the entire ball. So you don't have a single point of pressure pushing into the ball to hold it. You have literally the underside, the top side, and the back all squeezing as one unit on the ball and socket. So that's really going to help this not to strip over time, because one thing, and I was talking to Brian about this, I like the Yamaha Yes mounts. Those are a really cool mounting system too, that is really beefy and holds together really well. The only thing I've seen on some older stage customs, and not so much the recording customs, even though they use the same Yes mounts, but now there's the newer Yes mounts, right, that have a little bit different design than the older ones. But I have seen those where the single point of contact will make these strip over time to where your ball and socket won't hold. Or it will hold, but by the time you're done playing, all of a sudden your tom is hanging, down here instead of where you started it at, right? After beating on it for a night or a day or a week, whatever. But that's what I really like about this design in particular, is that's usually always the problem area, is that the ball and socket will strip over time and won't hold over time. But the way that these are made, and everything is like precision machined, and you can tell all you'd have to do is unscrew this top wing nut and this whole part would unfold, and you could take the ball and socket out and just put another one in there. So that's also another great thing, is that if they do strip over time, we'll see. I'm anticipating that they won't, or at least not nearly as fast as the other designs, like the Gretsch that I have behind me, or some of the older Yamaha Yes systems, just because of the way that it wraps around the ball. Okay, so anyway, got the two pieces rail, which I'm about to put on right now, but I just wanted to, and for the interest of making this video not 10 hours long for everyone, I'm going to hit the pause button in between doing a couple steps here and there, so that way it just turns into one seamless video that has some pauses in it, but that isn't, 45 minutes long. So what I've done is I've taken off the reso, and I'll give you a quick interior look at these Mapex shells. They're absolutely beautiful. The walnut just makes such a great interior ply because it's really handsome looking. In addition, you can tell that they finish it with just a really light finish of like polyurethane or something to make it so it's not so porous and will last a little bit longer. The hardware is also all black chrome. Everything is like super well made. So just give you a quick interior of the drum there. You can see all that cool wood grain, and there's an arm grain. And all the hardware is really nicely done. In addition to the bearing edge is really well done. So you can see that the round over bearing edge, they're sonic clear. What that consists of is that it starts out on the exterior, starts to wrap over, but then it has a backlathed sharper incline up here. So it's got their own design. It's more like a Gretsch design rather than a sharp 45-degree DW design, but it's kind of a hybrid between the two is what I'd describe it as. So it does have kind of a sharp point here where the bearing, it's not a rounded over bearing edge, but it does start on the exterior and rounds over to more of a back cut interior. So that's what the interior of the shells look like. You can see how I've arranged all my claws over here. So what this requires is that you just take off, well, you got to take off the whole head, right, to get to the interior of the drum. Then you just unscrew these top two for the top two front of the reso, and then you just I just undid these the back two of the batter. So what I'm going to do now is unscrew these top two and those front two, and those come completely off, and then these become your lugs. So I have to unscrew these off of the rail mount, but these become your lugs, and then you attach these to the drums, and then these rods screw directly into these, which become these. Hopefully everyone's following me here. And then the whole system will float on top, with these being your front two lugs and your back two lugs. Okay, so I'm going to pause the video here. I'm going to reach inside the drum and take those front two off. So these top two, these back two, batter, reso. Okay, so by the time that I unpause this video, you will then be looking at two new lugs that look identical but are not the same as these lugs, and are meant for mounting the whole rail system on top. Okay, so let's go ahead and pause the video, and you can get a sense of what the bass drum shell looks like there, and the interior of it, what the bearing edge is like, and then the black chrome hardware. Alright, here we go, pausing. Then I'm unscrewing these, unscrewing this one, the back two, and then mounting those on, and then putting the rails on, and then all the rest of the design floats right on top of those two rails. Alright, so see you in a bit, guys. Alright guys, a little on pause here. So as you can see, I've taken off these top two and the back two for the resonant and the batter, and I'm actually very pleasantly surprised. The holes were drilled well, a bunch of filings didn't come out, and they're single point contact screws, so there's not two holes drilled for every one point of contact of the lugs, which is great. So this is the first time I've taken any of these off. So you can see it's just one screw that goes through, and this second little knob just sticks through the other hole to prevent it from rotating, 180 degree, or at all. But those 2 points of contact with only one screw. So they were actually done well. There's not huge dents in the drum, or you can see a little bit of the outline of the footprint of where the plate meets against the shell. But you can see how they drill one hole for the screw and one hole for that second knob. So now that we're at this position, I'm going to now mount the rail ones, where these are the ones coming off next. So I'm just unscrewing these off of the assembly, and then unscrewing the screws that come with it. So now these four will become my lugs, and you can see how these are different from regular Mapex lugs by having this front receiver. So the threads there versus none on the regular one. So this is what a regular one looks like. This is what the mounting one for the rail design looks like, so that it has the receiver for the pole. Okay? Alright, let me pause the video again and get all four of these off, the ones that will receive the floating rods, and unpause when I'm back at that stage. See you in a bit. Alright, my dudes and my dudettes. Wah, wah, wah. I can't really see much that way. It was actually quite a bit easier than I thought. I was worried about getting everything aligned while having the mount on there, and because anytime you're working with any angles, any curvature, getting a straight pull and two parallel poles to line up evenly while having something securing the two poles in the middle. I actually tried taking this mount off first, but that actually made it more difficult, because what my thinking was is I was going to mount one rail at a time, then just put in the screws back in, because this takes a drum key. So in any case, it actually ended up being a little bit easier keeping that on there. And the good thing, the design, the way that they do it, is that these will still rotate on these threads in case there's just a little bit of millimeter you got to push in or out to get these to line up with the drilled holes. So see how each one of these kind of has some threading on there, so you can spin these lugs, air quotes lugs, to get it just that extra little millimeter in or out you need on the pole so that the holes line up well. Okay, so all it literally was just screwing those back in as the lugs. And now that's what the top rail mount system looks like. And then this whole system, well, this is a little difficult while holding the camera, but let me put the camera down. Probably a better idea there, huh, Blake? So what it does is this way, you can see that this will just slide back and forth depending on how close or far away you want your toms. So you can see how, I mean, I can literally pick the drum up by these two posts. Probably shouldn't be, but I am. Actually, you know, it's the same thing as when you're picking up by the hoops, because, you know, your hoops are being held on by those top tension most of the time anyway. So if you're picking it up, it's really, you're still holding on to 4 points of contact. But still, I like being careful with my stuff and not careless, so let's not pick the whole drum up by the two rails on top. And then what I did quickly while the video was paused was I just set this memory lock right here so that this part of the post doesn't extend too far past the receiver and the pressure plate and then ends up touching the shell. So you can see they have a nice like stop on there, so it's not going to be metal or something, like, you know, if it does hit the shell, it's not going to be metal on the lacquer. But you still don't want that plastic stopper rubbing it against your shell, right? So I just quickly kind of got an idea for how far that receiver plus the pole was going to reach by putting my finger under here and then just pushing it down and getting it. So, oh, okay, so then it's perfectly even with the bottom plate of this. And I'll try sticking the camera under there to see if we can get an angle, but that way I'm rest assured that nothing is going to be touching the bass drum at all, okay? So once you got that on there, you literally just takes a key and you can undo these four, and then you got your whole system where you're able to just slide it back and forth based on top of this mount. And it's got good pressure plates that will hold. So see how easily that slides too? Like, I'm not having to use, well, going, oh, there it goes, the other way back, going pretty easy too. So you can slide this back and forth on that pole system to get the toms exactly as far away towards the reso side or as close to you as you want on the batter side, just by sliding it on those poles. Then in addition to that, you've got all your angles from the ball and socket joint. So it's actually, once you cinch this down, this top part with the drum key, it really makes it like rock solid. You know, it'll still move around, and it has these pressure plates. Can't really see, there are these black pressure plates that wrap around the pole, and there are two of them underneath this. So each one of these screws will tighten down on each one of those pressure plates, which then grabs along these poles. And then, oh yeah, you can see, so what I did was I stuck my finger under there to make sure that this pole wasn't going to go through and still touch the shell. So see how everything's still completely off the shell except for these lugs, obviously the lugs. But now these become my tension rod receivers for the hooks. So it's basically retrofitted that fast, guys. So once I get my location down, you know, just secure this down, get this tight, and I'm not gonna over crank it or anything right now, because obviously I still have to set the whole thing up with the actual toms. But I want to get it secure enough so that we can throw a tom up on here. So then pressure plate down, and then it has another level. So not only this, where the post goes in and anchors to the sliding plate, which gives you your, you know, horizontal movement across the top of the poles. But then you also have, this is where the actual height of where the two mounting arms with the ball and socket joints will go. So there's another memory lock right here. So all I have to do is undo this memory lock, and then this top assembly will go up and down on this part of the pole, while this stays anchored and secured here without touching underneath of the drum. So pretty cool design, guys. It really is, because I mean, this whole thing is so solid. I could easily just pick the whole drum up by picking this up right now. So, and like I said, I don't want to be overly zealous with this whole thing, but just to give you an idea, look, just by picking up on it, it will raise the entire drum. So just like if you were to grab, you know, with your post still in of this gas gap on the Gretsch, you know, and pick your bass drum up by the post, same thing, but now everything's mounted. Now, I don't do that, but I'm just trying to give you an idea of the strength of the mounting system, how solid it is, how easy it is to configure and move this back and forth across the whole length of the drum, in addition to getting the exact height you want, the rotation you want, and then 360 degrees of the ball and socket joint on top of that. So it's got so many angles and degrees of movement that you can easily place the drums exactly where you want. So since the reso's still off right now, right? Because that's what they recommended, was doing it from the reso side, not from the batter side. So that's what I did. And those were pretty much the only directions I followed. So it was kind of, you know, logical and self-explanatory as you kind of looked at it and looked at the design. But at the same time, it was a little tricky just because I had to unscrew these lugs just for that first part of when I unpause this video again, to say, you know, just to move these out just a slight bit each way, because the holes had to line up perfectly while this is still, and I was kind of worried. I was like, well, if this isn't screwed in tight, you know, like each one of these lugs screwed all the way to the ends of the threads of the pole, isn't this going to rattle some or whatnot? But no, it doesn't, because it's sandwiched in between these, and there's 0 degrees of movement. And then I was thinking too, I was like, oh yeah, plus it's going to be locked down by the top pressure plate and not be able to rotate, because once these, you know, these two screws and the other side screws are tightened down, then that's a whole nother two sides that are, you know, got the pressure plates down, so that there's 0 movement in these poles at all. You know, like I could try and twist on them and they're not going anywhere. So let's throw a drum up. Blah! Oh, look what I found. Oh, sorry, I got a little sick there for a second. Sorry. I said let's throw a drum up, right? Got it, guys? Did that? Oh. So here now I'm going to put this up just a little more, so you guys are getting the first experience of mounting one of these on at the same time I am. And we've got our memory locks on there already in a weird kind of position, so I need to undo that too. But just to give you a general idea, okay. Now let me just undo the memory lock. Well, should have not rotated as far that way first. Undo the memory lock first, so it's just free floating and hanging there. And now, okay, now I can see how, there we go. Okay, so that'll line up better. Now I'm just going to tighten it down just for demonstration purposes. But once you've got the memory lock on, once you've got the tom on, then voila, we've got all these degrees of, I mean, look how far this ball and socket joint will move. Huge amounts. Huge amounts. And in addition to, because these are suspension mounts, so the tom moves on this mount and still will be, you know, suspended even in a rack mounted position. So I just put the 10, and I know I put the 10 up on the 12 side, but like I said, this is just for demonstration purposes only. So once you've got that like that, you can see how then you can move this whole system further away from you, further closer to you, in addition to up and down on this, and then getting your exact angle that you like. Do you want it really low and directly in front of you? That's pretty much the setup that I like. So, putting that kind of in that position, that's all the way down on this mounting bracket here. So just moving it up a little bit. And then, I get my memory lock in the position that I want after the fact. But that's the design, guys. So it's pretty easy to use, and it went on very easily. In addition to one thing that let me just kind of move this out of the way to the side so you can see the other ball and socket here. But once I get, the other drum up, the other cool thing though is if I just want one up, voila, this comes straight out. All I have to do is grab my cymbal stand post, and I've got a cymbal stand mount right next to, if I want to put the one up, so I'll have one up and then just put my cymbal stand mount on the other. And I know I'm just grabbing one that's easily accessible and has my splash on it from the other, but I'm just to give you an idea. So obviously this would be on this side and the tom would be on this side, but just to show you guys the options basically. So then I can have one up with my ride cymbal also attached to that floating bass drum mount. So that way, all I have to bring is that one piece of gear to mount my tom and have a ride off to my side or a crash in front of me or whatever. In addition to, Mapex makes dual arm that come off the same post as well. So if I just got that one piece, it basically has one pole that then splits into two mounts, so I could have another up in addition to the cymbal mount on there. So there are a lot of possibilities with this configuration, but that's literally it, guys. So pretty cool design if you ask me. Really cool design. And everything is just bulletproof. Like, it is made really, really well. The parts are machined very, very precision, to the point where like everything fits like a glove, but is also capable of moving around enough to where you can get everything where you like it. So that's a pretty cool thing if you ask me.